This is Mike Young with a plantbaseddiet.org, and we are back for our Wednesday show with XYZo. And XYZo, of course, is our director of mindfulness for the nonprofit. And this is, I think, an extra special show today because it's our Earth Day show. And as you can see from the title, Earth Day, Our Plates, People, Positivity, and the Planet. That's the title of this show. So welcome, XYZo.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mike. Thanks everyone for tuning in and watching wherever in the world you are. So yes, today is a special day, Earth Day, a holiday in which we're all celebrating, honoring, recognizing the Earth. I personally find the holiday a little goofy,
Yeah,
as
me
I was
too.
telling Mike before, because every day is Earth Day, but I think it is an appropriate and positive, productive thing when we can have the entire collective, focus in on different matters such as this. Because although every day should be Earth Day, not every day is Earth Day for most people quite yet. So, in that respect, shout out to everyone who was a part of initially creating this holiday. Earth Day. So today we're in for a fun one. Lots of different random topics. It's going to be a kind of mosaic, and we'll be speaking on how some of these different topics interrelate and connect to one another, from the food that's on our plate to people not only in our lives but in society around the world, places that are far off that we might not be aware of. Also speaking on the planet and positivity. So being able to stay optimistic despite a lot of kind of depressing, dark, uh, negative information that we might be hearing.
Especially now, yeah.
Yeah, particularly now during these funny times. Yeah, or interesting times, I should say. But nonetheless, so beginning with what's on our plates. So when it comes to speaking on matters of veganism, of plant-based eating, sometimes I hesitate to a degree because myself personally, I don't really care for repetition, if I'm outside of a kind of training context. So that's to say, if I hear a message that I already resonate with and I already know, then hearing it more times will do more to annoy me, than to like, oh yay, excite me. So that's to say, I'm not really the one to break down all the science and the facts and stats as to how, animal products are detrimental to the environment. But I'll just leave that little statement out there for those who might not be aware of that. And that's to say, I believe that this is more common knowledge these days than not. So again, I don't know. I just don't want to.
Yeah. Well, I would say the same thing about yourself, that you are the director of mindfulness. So we have folks with the nonprofit, plantbaseddiet.org, that are totally into the science and really nothing but that. But that's the truth is, there's many facets to this movement. There's many facets to people's lives, and some of these facets resonate more with others. And with yourself, I mean, you could approach this movement from a total just a personal thought process, without knowing any facts, and it would all make sense.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah. All right. So then let's speak on more so the perspectives behind all these different things. So one notion that I believe most would agree upon is the idea of being selfless, in being helpful to others, in being the opposite of selfish. So rather than a me mindset and mentality, being able to positively impact and uplift other people, whether in your immediate space or communities or beyond. And so, speaking more so from the kind of internal perspective, perhaps, when it comes to plant based food and just traditional animal products, unfortunately, it would seem that in continuing to entertain animal products, it comes from a little more of a selfish mindset, because ultimately it has been said again and again and again through many different individuals, speakers, scientists, doctors, etc., the detrimental impact of animal products, the positive health benefits of animal products. And so, basically, often the case in a lot of arguments that I've seen or heard, the person who's pro animal product, let's say, will state, oh, but this, and then, oh no, but da 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 da, dismantled argument. Oh, but that, blah, 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 dismantled argument. Well, I just like the taste, or something to that nature, to that degree, and just reflecting on life and what gives meaning and fulfillment, what makes the heart full, often is the case that it is giving to others, is being more selfless, being able to make a sacrifice for ourselves for the greater good. And then it just so happens that the greater good, life, the universe, whatever words you want to use, will often reward us back. The energy that we're putting out into the world is the energy that comes back to us. Beautiful quotes, a half tangent, but it'll connect, and I'm sure we'll dive into it again. That is to say, that the love with which we're loved is the love. No, the love that comes back to love us is the love with which we love. So that's to say, if I'm putting out 10 points of love into life, 10 points of love will come back to love me. If I am doing this amount of selfless action for the betterment of the planet and all people, well, then benefit will come to me in a myriad of different ways that might not be so clear and obvious, but that will be nonetheless still to my benefit.
Yeah, I know that you've mentioned before that everything is energy, right? I think you believe that everything's energy. So with the Earth, with Earth Day, and really looking out for the planet and trying to have the best environment in which to live. That's the planet is the environment that we live in. If we do things that are going to harm it, that'll come back to us. Not knowing anything about the science, but I think everybody knows when they're doing something that, well, not everything, but most things that you do, I think that you could do that are environmentally bad. I think we kind of just know. You can kind of feel that.
Absolutely, and connected to this notion is one of my favorite aspects about just plant-based eating is really the whole opportunity that it is for mindset transformation. It is really the new thoughts, new perspectives that are cultivated and strengthened through engaging in that kind of lifestyle. So in connecting back to this notion of selflessness and then connection to what you're mentioning in terms of decisions that are bad, obviously for the environment, for people, etc. Like this lifestyle is not only beneficial for the body, for the individual self, fueling the body positively, Therefore, the mind will be able to work more optimally. If the mind is more optimal, my emotions will be regulated to a greater degree, staying harmoniously. And then, also energetically, just a lighter sense of being, the opportunity for more pleasant experiences to unfold in my life. Not only beneficial for people due to notions of just like food and justice, so for example, many places upon the earth, billions of people every day living with food insecurity, not really knowing with full definitive belief as to where their next meal will come from. And yet we have billions of animals on the planet that are brought into existence for the sheer reason to eventually slaughter them and to eat them. But in order to get them ready for that point of consumption, they are fed abundantly, very much so before they're ready. So that's to say, over here, like a young lad in a distant land, starving, over here, an animal being fed excessively to be fattened up. So the animal, although suffering daily, is never starving. If anything, the opposite, just being overfed. And then that animal coming to its end, only to be, let's say it's a cow in this example, to be a little steak, you know, a little unnecessary burger. Meanwhile, those foods aren't even necessary for our survival, but people on the other side are dying, from not having access to food.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And there's so many levels. Like if just talking from Earth Day, right? Generally, for animal agriculture, you have to clear land, and at least
yeah.
I could say East Coast of the United States. Normally, that land would be a forest if it were
Mm.
just left to go native. So that's gone. It's become a surface that creates runoff, waste from the animals. Like you said, it's not even needed, and then it causes other humans to starve in the same process. It's just so many things if you really dive into it, and you don't have to dive into it that deep. We're just having a few minutes conversation here, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't seem to make any sense. I don't know who thought up the system in the past. Well, I guess maybe it was thought up in a time when transportation was very difficult, right? I mean, it wasn't that long ago that transportation was difficult. So you had to try to have everything you could in the place that you were, correct? So like if you were in a climate that wasn't very conducive to growing fruits and vegetables, especially not all year round, you needed other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I could maybe understand in the past a potential necessity because given restraints on communications and transportation. But nowadays, even if you don't have the transportation to bring in, say, fruits and vegetables to you at a certain time of the year when you can't get them, depending upon where you live, there now exists even technology to grow all these things indoors,
Yeah.
just as if you were growing it anywhere. So I guess maybe it's just an old thought pattern. This is just kind of popping into my head as we're talking. Maybe that's why people thought that was okay.
Indeed. And I think another key insight that really wasn't taken into account is just the interconnectivity of everything, because it's really, for every action, it's opposite and equal reaction. And so, as you're mentioning, the clearing of the land, and the runoff that's produced, and in those local communities, how it is detrimental, the runoff, fumes emitted from the factories to the people who actually live around there, cancer rates on the rise.
And
And then
Southwest
also,
Florida, right? Algae in the waters, right?
yeah, exactly.
Red tide and everything else. Yeah, it's not just showing up in the water on its own. It's running off the land usually.
Yeah, precisely. And from that to the deforestation, so all of the loss of life that occurs because of deforestation, and then the lack of trees, meaning a lack of carbon dioxide that's being held down on the ground, so further global warming, heating processes happening. So all these things connected, and when one really becomes aware of it, then you start to see it just in everything and everywhere. you know so some people, I I'm gonna make up a story. This is like a story, a memory, like a meme, but I'm just gonna blend it here together. But essentially, you know two girls uh going out to eat. One orders a hamburger from McDonald's, and the other one, let's say, brought her stir fry from home. And when the stir fry girl sees the hamburger, she begins to cry. And the burger girl is like, "Why are you crying? What's wrong?" She says, "That burger." But, because she sees beyond the burger,
Right.
because it's not just, sad cow got killed. Obviously, this is a tragedy in and of itself, and that's only at the first level. But then again, it's the individuals on and other places in the world, and even here locally, like USA, that suffer food insecurity, starvation from the people in those animal agriculture communities adversely affected. It's from all the sentient beings that got killed to create the land, to produce the meat. It is all life on the planet and all future life on the planet due to climate change issues that are also at risk. You know, these things are very immense. And why I mentioned before a mosaic, because really, like any little notion at which you look at when it comes to plant-based eating, or really many other topics in life, is just one little piece of a much larger picture. And being able to see more and more of the picture, I believe, is a productive endeavor, because then it allows us to live from a more informed and wiser place, rather than think our actions don't affect many other factors that they actually do. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's those things that are hidden. Like if you just go to the store and buy your food, you go to a restaurant, buy your food. If you're getting animal products, you just don't know these things. They're just hidden, and you don't have to think about them. And a lot of people don't want to think about them. These
Yeah.
things aren't pleasant things to think about.
Certainly. Certainly. And this is an important notion, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because it would be as if, okay, so there's a common response, to hardship, to heartbreak, to trauma, to whatever the case is, to essentially emotionally shut ourselves off, to become numb, because these things are unpleasant. Because if we really think about it, we'll start to feel hopeless, and all this. So instead, let me just ignore it. Let me not feel it, etc. The danger with doing that is that then the opposite side of the spectrum also cannot be felt. So if I shut myself off from feeling sadness, then I also shut myself off from the possibility of feeling happiness. If I close my mind to these matters, which I don't like, I'm also closing my mind to matters which could awaken my mind to a greater degree and be more, fulfilling for me. So, really, if we're able to embrace life, the good and the bad, the black and the white, the light and the dark, the yin and the yang, and see the positives within the negatives, seeing the negatives within the positives, then we'll be able to live a more full, holistic, fulfilling life.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit more? I
Yeah.
kind of I get what you're saying. I understand the idea of what you're saying. You're saying that if you're closing yourself off to one thing on one side, you're closing off on both sides. So how do you know that? Why does that happen? I'm not quite
Okay.
sure I understand that.
Sure, sure, sure. So let's look into an example, I suppose. So going back to what we were mentioning in terms of shutting myself off from the realities behind meat, let's say. Let's say someone hears this conversation, some minutes back, and it's like, oh, no, 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 exit, click out. Don't want to hear about it. Well, then, yeah, bye bye. In entertaining that kind of mindset, it is the opposite of a mindset which is a little more open, which leaves room for curiosity.
Hmm.
Because let's say then it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know all those connections. Okay, let me research a little bit about what they're talking about, throwing in some keywords into the search engine, into YouTube, whatever the case is. It's like, oh, wow, this is bigger than I realized. And then the mind expanding. But for those who would have just like, oh, no, don't like it, ignore, essentially a beautiful quote that I love, which is how we do one thing is how we do everything.
Hmm. All right.
And it's the same kind of principle. So rejecting and shutting off information instantly or more quickly rather than not allowing for alternate information to even exist in your awareness results in living in a very confined and small worldview. Because if this is being ignored, then many other things are also being ignored. If one isn't going deeper in this, then it's more likely that the propensity for going deeper is not existent
Hmm.
whatsoever, or at the very least is not being entertained, cultivated, and strengthened. And in going deeper into anything, we're going to come across many different perspectives, many maybe different like side topics, sub-disciplines, etc. So essentially, if you go deeper, you're going to find things that you care for and things that you don't care for.
Right.
So yeah, it's more so a matter of like uh, living a little deeper and kind of dancing around on the not the edge, on the surface. On the
Okay.
surface.
Well,
Yeah.
let me see if I can clarify here. Then it sounds like from a mindfulness perspective,
Mhm.
the goal would be to have an open mind
Yeah.
in general. Is that right?
Yes. So another nice little quote that a cup that is full cannot be filled, with new insights, new knowledge, new experiences. So it's always about remaining, that empty cup, so that you can take in more information.
All right.
And really, another quote is that, like the beginning of knowledge is to know that we know nothing.
Hmm.
Because again, the deeper we go, visually, it's easy to see. I don't know if I can do the best job of explaining the visual, but I'll do an attempt. So it's as if, let's say, knowledge is like a grand house, just info, knowledge, data, whatever word you want to use. And let's say a new topic is like a door. So you open the door, you go into the room. Oh, wow, this is a great room. So cool. All these new experiences, new things. And then in that room, there are two more doors, okay, that you had not seen before. So then you open one of those doors, like, oh, wow, this is wicked. This is sweet. Oh, so many things. And then in that room, there are four more doors, okay, and things just become exponential.
Hmm.
And so to know that you don't know would be to say, at room number one, like, I really don't know what's in this house. But then once you go through a few doors, you realize that the doors won't stop multiplying and that there are just more and more doors, and that there's no way in this life we'll ever be able to go into every single room and to investigate every object and the history of everything within each room and the meaning of every room, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
um, so yeah.
Well, okay. No, is that something that you would consider as an individual? Because every individual is going to have a different way of dealing with knowledge or lack of knowledge. Is that learned? Is that is it taught to you when you're young? Uh, is everyone have a default? Is everyone's personality different? Is everyone's approach to this aspect of mindfulness different just from a personality standpoint? I mean, how is this? Can you
Yeah.
comment on all of that?
Yeah, I think there are certainly different, like, personality characteristics which are more inclined to being like an investigator, scientist, explorer, curious naturally. But I do believe that everybody has this to some degree. And, like all children, very curious, excited for life. So really, a lot of it unfortunately comes back to like conditioning in early childhood.
Hmm.
If we had parents who supported exploration and learning new things, seeing things for ourselves, because as a baby, everything is fully new,
Mhm.
and we're just like searching. So just imagine like two different scenarios in terms of curiosity, and how it will develop. So baby one, baby two. So with baby one, let's say they're on the grass outside and they're just crawling, and then they pick up a twig. Never before have they seen a twig. This is literally fully new stimulus experience. The parent comes over, no, no, stop, drop that, take it, rip it out of their hand.
Mm.
Okay. Which I see all the time, sadly.
Right.
Baby two, crawling around, picks up the twig, like, oh wow. Parent comes over, oh wow, look at it, check it out, investigate. What is that? Okay. And then let's say fast forward, a few years into school, baby one, now child one. Like, teacher, miss, why is it like this? Because I said so. Child two, miss, why is it like this? Oh, well, that's a great question. Well, have you thought about this, and that? So essentially, the way that we are conditioned, whether teachers, whether family,
Mm.
whether the media that we watch, will have a tremendous impact on us for the rest of our lives. Whether our curiosity was cultivated or whether it was squashed.
Mm.
But then another major component too just comes um, in terms of life, and our levels of stress. Because if I am super stressed because I have children to feed, I have a lot of bills to pay, I got debt collectors coming my way, the dog keeps barking, the news saying that everything is going to hell, then I don't care about being curious. I don't care about new knowledge. I care about my problems and trying
You're
to
just
solve
trying to
them.
keep your head above water at that point, right?
Yeah, indeed. And that's really the case for most people. Because
Yeah.
even if they're not in a dire situation, there is a certain level of stress, and more often than not, that stress has become chronic.
Hmm.
Has gone from acute to chronic, and
What
so
what is
yeah,
that? Define chronic. What does it take for stress to be considered chronic?
chronic, stress felt over any duration, really more than a few minutes.
Okay.
So if you're feeling the same kind of stress or from the same sources for um, a few days to a few weeks to a few years, this is considered chronic
Hmm.
because, throwback to the ancestors, to evolutionary uh, development in the brain, to hunter-gatherer society. Stress was, I heard a rumbling in the bush. I'm stressed. Cortisol is released, so my body is excited
Hmm.
to get ready to fight or to get ready to run away.
That's it. Fight or flight. Yep.
Yeah, that's basically it. And then once I'm out, once the beast is defeated, or once I have fled the situation, I'm back at peace. There's no more stress. The cortisol is lowering once again. But these days, the stress comes in the form of our unopened emails,
Hmm.
comes in the form of the bills that we have to pay, comes in the form of, this, that, and the other. All these fully new features of contemporary life that are causes of stress. If we haven't cultivated the proper relationship with these different things, simply through our perspective and the way that we view these things, the value and significance that we assign to these things, then it is assured that we will suffer much more stress than necessary. Again, if those proper relationships haven't been formulated.
Relationships between what? Between explain that a little bit.
Yeah.
These
So,
are mental. These are mental relationships, right?
yes, correct. So, okay, let's say debt. Let's say my bills. So, if I view it in such a way that, I am like a subhuman because I have debts, because I'm financially struggling, or if I view myself in a lower status or something because I owe someone money, if I'm believing these things, entertaining those thoughts, or if I'm believing that, you know, I can't breathe, I can't be at peace until these debts are paid, then this is a relationship that I have formed through my own beliefs and perceptions of these things, of debt, that is causing me greater stress than if I simply saw it as energy that I must give back over time
Hmm.
in the form of financial capital, you know? So essentially, it goes back to the stories that we tell ourselves in our head, the stories about all things in our life, ourself, and how we're connected, you know, the
Okay.
story
Well,
between,
I guess a more simple way that I would think of explaining what you're saying that I've thought about in the past is just general storms of life, right? Everyone has these life, and sometimes it's a storm. Things just keep you get involved in these things. They start heading towards you, and you really can't do anything about it, like a storm. You try to
Mhm,
get out of the way. You got to use some finesse, but there are many people, maybe it's most people, the way you're describing it, that can't really manage these storms well, and because of that, there's a constant battle, and I guess a battle, and then there's not much peace, and there's not time for you to be open-minded to consider other things, because that is just the normal everyday life happenings are consuming you mentally to the where you cannot
mhm.
take in anything new, right? That's how I guess that's how I've it seems like it's similar to what you're saying, but I totally get it. And because of that, I mean, maybe folks don't even realize what that was. And I know, like in the past, for me, I could say I was in that position. I know I
Mhm.
was, and I didn't recognize it when I was in that position. You know?
Mhm.
And I did have different ideas and thoughts than I do today. And there were many things that I couldn't consider because of everything that was going on. And I can say now, having been there and been through that, that it is important to get through that if someone's stuck in that, to get
Mhm.
through that and to learn how to manage that. And how does someone do that? How does someone, if many or most people are in that, how do you get out of that?
I think it really comes back to strong foundations, you know. So I think the first step is truly to cultivate a strong physical, mental, emotional foundation. Because ultimately, it comes to one's energy. Like how much energy is one able to produce and cultivate in one's life in order to get something done, in order to take some kind of action. In that storm, in that overwhelm, essentially there are just many tasks, to be done, and one doesn't feel that one is at the energetic level to be able to fulfill all those different tasks. So and really like breaking it down to the basics, from getting as best as one can, one's proper sleep to proper nutrition. This is where mindfulness tools come in big time, in terms of just like meditation,
Mhm.
really being the key. Yoga, I'm going to add into that as well, because often in the case of these different things too, is not only the actual situation, the objective, context of what's happening, but again, the stories that we're telling ourselves about it. So let's say I have debt to pay. So let's just say outright I owe 100,000. Okay, it's like some entity I must give $100,000 back to. But then the story in my mind will create a fully different life. So story one, I could be saying, like, I owe 100,000. Like, I'm gonna die. Like, like I'm never
I'll
gonna be
never
able
get,
to pay this
I'll
back.
never get out of this. I'll be
Yeah,
working for the rest of my life and I still won't pay it off.
yeah, indeed. Like just all of these different narratives. Like, oh, I'll never be able to be happy. I'll never be able to do what I need to do. I'm gonna be working excessive hours every day for the rest of my life. No, blah 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 blah. Story city. And then entertaining that story, that results in a daily nice dose of suffering, because those stories are creating emotions. Those emotions are generating this neurochemical cocktail that I might not enjoy so much.
Of course not. Yeah,
Whereas story two, okay, I owe 100,000. Let's say in story two, I've been doing more mindfulness practices, so my head is just more clear. So I'm not as emotionally turbulent. It's like, perhaps it would be wise to set up a plan, a strategy for repayment. It's like, okay, I've set up the plan. All right, now I just got to stick to it. you know?
that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Yeah, again, it's funny because it also, like, connected to this is the same deal with physical pain. Like, let's say sustaining an injury. Like, let's say I'm walking and I stub my toe. There's the physical pain
Yeah.
and then the emotional pain that comes from the stories. So, situation one, stub my toe. Ah, I hurt. All right, keep walking. Story number two, stub my toe. Oh, my toe, this is awful. My day is ruined. How dare you move the seat there? You know, all this extraness.
Yeah.
And you know, these examples might seem like random, silly, and tiny, but I would certainly encourage everybody to reflect and try to investigate, you know, some of the stories that we tell ourselves
Hmm.
in some of the different areas of life. Because certainly every single human has stories that they've told themselves at different times.
And are telling themselves on a regular
Yeah,
basis, right? Yeah.
absolutely,
And and
absolutely.
and I could see how that would affect whether you're open to new ideas, because you could totally smother your mental capacity with those stories,
Hmm.
and then you're not going to be open to learning about or even thinking about what's best for the earth like this on Earth Day.
Absolutely.
You won't even. It's good that there's an Earth Day once a year, but you're not going to really benefit from that. So.
Yeah, yeah, truly. And that's really why I chose to dive a little deeper down this path of mindfulness, contemplative practice, holistic health, the healing arts, etc., because of the value of liberating ourselves, you know, from ourselves, and how that in turn results in a deeper appreciation and respect relationship with the earth. Because ultimately, you know, I'm here for the earth, uh, the way I like to view it. And so a way in which the earth can be supported is by connecting people to the earth on a personal level. And the way that people can be connected on a personal level is to assist them in the process of removing the barriers that keep them from connecting in the first place. And those barriers, for the most part, are all mental, kind of emotional states,
Huh.
lifestyles, you know, etc.
Mental
So
and yeah, mental and emotional. That's very interesting. Those barriers, because there's
yeah,
all kinds of barriers. I don't usually hear. You're saying almost everything is mental emotional too. So that's
yeah. Uh, yes. And basically, you know, the physical being the, let's say, like the, not the base as in the foundation, but the base as in the lowest level. You know, things really beginning energetically, mentally, going down emotionally, and then finally physically. You know, another way to see this would be to say that, you know, all human made constructs that we see around us were all first at some point a thought, you know, idea that
someone's
exists.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, that existed exclusively on the mental level, you know,
Well,
and
you're
then
you're talking about human-made things, not nature.
correct.
Or what are you talking? Both.
No, on the nature front, I'm not even gonna get into that too much.
Okay. Okay.
You
But
know,
we're talking
I'll
about
get a little more
human-made.
out there. Yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Just want to clarify. That's all.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so connecting it more so to Earth Day and to, you know, the planet is really when we're able to overcome our tiny problems, you know, like in our little worries, we're then able to connect to, you know, the bigger story that's taking place. We're then able to serve, you know, that greater calling challenge, and in that process feel far more fulfilled, you know, than had we just focused on the individual self. Like basically, I will feel more fulfilled in positively serving my community and the earth than I will trying to, you know, quote unquote, get my shit together. So the sooner that we can, the better it is. But it's also very important to note that it's not just a one and done process.
Right.
That it's like, oh, I figured it out all now. I'm going to be groovy and set forever. Which is why I really like the idea of focusing on foundations, because if we're able to consistently cultivate different internal foundations that don't allow for more dense experiences, emotions, thoughts to even land and take a footing, then we're going to be able to, stay more up than not. And then when hardships do come, we'll be able to be more resilient and bounce back off the jump. So, yeah.
I also want to comment on what you mentioned about serving the community, right? Helping others, helping out the earth on Earth Day here. I mean, it's a constant effort, I think, to maintain our environment that we live in, which happens to be the earth. It requires effort. So in the past, like when I was growing up, I felt like I'm 50. So I felt like when I was growing up, you could easily disconnect. Now some people say it's a problem in today's society that you can't disconnect, but it's also good in that if you're talking about it from a community perspective, if you're plugging in and connecting on the right levels and serving the community and helping to better things, then you're going to feel better a lot more and all the time potentially, if that is
Yeah.
the goal, like you're saying. So if you're connected in that way, that's great. I think a lot of people aren't connected in that way. They're connected. Oh, XYZo's picture's gone. See?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm still listening though.
Okay. A lot of folks are, I mean, almost everyone's always connected now, right? But the question is, what types of connections do you have? Who are you connected to? And if you're connected to the right people and you are helping the community, I think it's a great, great thing. But I could also see the other side of that, and that if you're connected to the wrong things, that is going to hurt you on many levels, including mentally, as you're speaking about.
Yes, absolutely. Connection is key. And I'll share a little story as to how it relates to the earth and connections. So, there is a course at FGCU in which students are guided through many different contemplative practices. So, different styles of meditation, different yoga styles, getting into some qigong, a variety of different activities, so that everyone can kind of find, the niche that feels best to them.
Right.
And in this course, there are course assistants who then have small groups of typically like 4 to 8 or so. And there are a few days in the semester in which the course assistant gets to have an exclusive experience with their group rather than go to the main class with everybody. So there was one semester where I was a course assistant, and with my small group, they were a very excited bunch. And it was great. So we had to do a retreat, so a longer 3-hour experience. But then again, since I had an excited bunch, we were like, nah, let's go camping. Okay, so so instead of the little 3-hour deal, we ended up doing some like 13-hour deal. And my groups, we always go a little more intense. So myself, I really wanted to nature connect to a greater degree and a little more raw, a little shout out to the ancestors, see how they were living. So rather than like the nice tents or a little sleeping bag or a hammock or something, I just went out there. I had like 2 pashminas, 2 scarves, and that was about it. And we chose an area that I was familiar with, and we weren't super far, but maybe like 30 minutes or so walk back to civilization, in case anything went a little haywire. But yeah, so that night we had planned that weeks in advance, and it just so happened that in the hours beforehand, a tropical storm decided to swing on by Florida. So we still did. We still went out.
It was
we
wet.
still we still camped. Absolutely, it was drenched. So we did manage to sleep, and finally, I was probably drifted for no more than like 180 seconds, and then like raindrops
Wow. Yeah.
and pouring. So then
Oh,
the rest of the night we were up. We obviously didn't sleep whatsoever. Um, some other people did have their tents and their nice like, amenities and whatnot, but again, me and the true few did not, on purpose, intentionally to really get that more raw, difficult experience. But we were just like huddled, cuddled under a tree, kind of like shivering,
well,
again, drenched.
well,
Yeah,
just something. So what I find extraordinary about that, not even knowing the end of the story, is just that something so simple as that can totally make you forget about anything else that's going on in your life that you might consider important or whatever, just that. Because
yeah.
we take all this for granted now,
Yeah,
that we have shelter, that you're not going to get wet when it rains when you're trying to sleep.
absolutely. And that's not even talking about all the mosquitoes, because if it
Oh,
wasn't soaked, then you were drenched in mosquitoes.
oh,
And as soon as it stopped raining, all the mosquitoes came back out to play. So, needless to say, it was physically a more tough situation than light and easy. And eventually the sun came up, and at around like 6 a.m., that all that craziness probably started like 1:30 or so in the morning.
mm.
And again, we were just up and keeping each other company, just chit chatting, joking, telling stories, trying to keep each other's spirits lifted, because it was definitely a trying situation. So then, yeah, once 6 a.m. came around, I was like, all right, let's get out of here. Everyone wake up, pack your stuff, let's dip. But essentially, that taught me many things. And as you're saying, gratitude tremendously, because to think back, basically that kind of night and those kind of challenges, that represented just another night in the life of an ancestor,
Mm.
in the life of thousands of ancestors, across thousands of years. So now, if I don't know, if the next episode of whatever isn't out on Netflix yet, how could I be so upset? It truly, it's a proper perspective. Being employed is truly like the antidote to a lot of suffering when we really understand the degree and magnitude of how much weight something really has. And people will definitely say, oh, it doesn't matter, suffering is still suffering, people will still feel bad if they feel bad, blah blah blah. However, this is now an unpopular opinion that I do believe that in this day and age, in this culture, it's as if like weakness, victimhood, not the proper, like, courageous, open-hearted vulnerability is celebrated, but rather the vulnerable as in like weak and timid, and it's okay to, not toughen up and power up. So I'm all
Yeah.
for
Well,
that.
I
That
think that it goes back to the general idea that I understand, that nobody stays the same, right? You're either making progress in whatever this might be, whether it's mental or not, or you're going backwards. And if someone's being sheltered on purpose from anything that's going to get in the way of any kind of growth, then the growth isn't going to happen.
Yes, absolutely, positively. I Something went off on my phone.
Yeah, I see it's a still picture of you. the actual video streaming video isn't going.
And I'm making my way back to y'all, I promise.
Okay. There you go. You're
All
back.
right, there we go. Excellent. So yeah, another thing that I learned that night is the real power of community and supporting each other. Because that night made me realize that really without others, we would not have made it. That night I would not have stayed sane and made it had it not been for the people around me, supporting me and sharing, the burdens of those trials. So really forming right relationship. So right relationship being, authentic relationships, respectful relationships, having, love centered, love based intentions in our relationships, embracing responsibility, for all of our actions, for all aspects of our life, and thereby abandoning a victim mentality. Really, just with those two things alone, life will be that much more powerful, that much more blissful. And with those two things, we'll be able to positively impact the planet through whatever it is that we choose to do. Because, as I was mentioning earlier, it's really the issue on the planet, comes from people, humans.
Right.
It's like,
Yes.
I'm gonna break the secret, but humans are behind a lot of the, baggage that we see. And it's from outdated, antiquated paradigms, mental perspectives, and imbalanced emotions, mental states, that these kind of destructive behaviors are able to perpetuate. So, as we empower ourselves and bring ourselves into balance, we're then able to empower, support, and help in the balancing process of those around us and into our communities. And as we do this, we'll be able to free up the mental, emotional, spiritual energy to be able to solve the greater issues, upon the planet. Because again, going back to those examples of just everyone who doesn't give a damn about the planet, they certainly do about something, and that something is probably something that causes, a sense of stress, anxiety, worry, etc. So, it's all about our energy, our attention, and then our intention. So, yeah, those are some
That's
words, man.
that's a challenge. That's a real challenge because
Absolutely.
as you've described, it's fairly complex as to why someone's mental state or position won't allow them to move forward and grow, right? And then to
Mhm.
try to like you can't. I don't think there's just one single thing you can say to someone in that who's in that state that's going to
Yeah.
get them out of it. And it's very very hard to have a relationship with a person like that. Although you need to on some level because otherwise, if we're viewing this as a state of imbalance
Mhm.
that can be and should be corrected, they need help with that. So and that's why it's great to have you because you have all these different techniques and different ideas as to how to manage your own mind. And I think that's all you can control is your own mind, right? So you have to get yourself in a state where you're able to help because like you said, it's all about helping others, helping people, helping the planet, whatever it is. That's the ultimate goal.
Mhm. Yeah, and an important note there is that in helping ourselves, we do help others as well. They're interconnected in that when I'm able to bring myself into balance, therefore my imbalance won't be a cause of harm or disharmony in another.
Yeah.
And also, an important note that I'm forgetting, sadly, and I want to bring it back. But oh well. Okay, okay. So yes, these matters are very complex and challenging, and they can be spoken about simply, but the fact of one's life is far more complicated, than just oh, it's just an imbalance, just it's all in the mind, you got it. Of course not, but that is the game, that is the challenge of life, that is the thing to do, because it in order to go to the next level, we have to overcome our different challenges. And a very key perspective that's supported me a lot, which is just super uh, empowering, rather than depressing, that, when someone learns about all these different challenges, whether environmental or ethical or what have you, it's seen as, oh, like everything is a problem, an issue,
Mm.
bad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I like to use the word challenge instead of all these, because if we're able to see all of our issues and problems as challenges, we're able to see them as stepping stones, which will force us to grow, to then step up to that next level. Whether it is becoming more resilient, more reliable, more powerful, more intelligent, more disciplined, whatever the case is,
Mm.
all of our challenges are essentially, you know, lesson packages to support our growth.
Lesson packages. Okay.
Yeah, but they are disguised, and seem to be just obstacles that are keeping us from whatever it is we're trying to achieve. You
Yeah.
know,
I've heard of something. You may have heard of this. Uh, it's a definition of a problem. A problem is an opportunity in disguise.
I like that. Yeah, yeah,
Right? It's almost
definitely,
it's two ways of looking at
definitely.
it.
Yeah, so similarly, I like to zoom out and to view a lot of these problems that we're facing on the planet through this optimistic, opportunistic perspective. So for example, one might say, you know, we're damned to hell environmentally.
I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not either. But many certainly do. But rather than see this, I can see climate change, or anyone can see climate change. I'm not trying to like brag and boast here. Like I see it like this. No, it can be seen as an opportunity for the collective, for people from all different walks of life, all nations, all religions, all beliefs, whatevers, to come together for a common good, to come together for a shared treasure, which is the earth, which is not even a treasure as to objectify it, but the mother. Like all of our physical vessels, molecularly coming from components of the earth, every object that's around our physical environment, everything originally coming from the earth. So, really that earth care is is just like the deepest care that we could have, and just a true care. And in supporting that, in supporting the earth, in supporting humanity, we will be supported by life. That science, I don't know if I can break down.
Well, it's like
that,
it's the general idea, right? It's everything's energy. What you put out will return to you.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's how we're
absolutely.
looking at this, and from that perspective, from that mindfulness perspective, and I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, those are some fun little tidbits on what's on one's plate, people, positivity, and the planet. And yeah, do you have any closing questions for me, Mike, or any other closing statements? I think I've shared my little bit.
Well, I think this was an excellent overview of how the concept of mindfulness is directly related to, I say, just the optimization of our Earth's habitat and environment.
Yeah,
It's pretty deep. I mean, when what you've talked about, and it affects everybody. Nobody escapes what you talked about.
yeah.
Nobody can opt out of that.
Even if you think you can hop on uh, Musk's ship, you're still connected. You're still connected. Mars won't save you. But another notion to end it again optimistically, which is that all of these different issues are challenges because they are forcing us to grow to get to the next level. So these different climate issues being opportunities to create new systems of living,
Right. I
new
agree.
infrastructures, new technologies, just new lifestyles in general that are more connected and harmonious to the earth. It's as if we had to let's say that this is the hunter gatherer path, just like very simple living, you
Mm.
know, and then over here is technology land. So we did a deep deviation, but now it's about kind of a you know wiggling and intermingling
Right.
of being able to connect to the earth, but also integrate the technology in such a way
Yeah.
that is more balanced, and that is not only not destructive but perhaps conducive and self-regenerative, giving back to the earth as well.
Yeah. I mean,
So
look at what happened on Monday. This is Wednesday now, Earth Day in 2020, and on Monday, oil was priced at a negative price per barrel. I don't know if you noticed that on the markets. It was
I think
oil producers had to pay money to get rid of their stock. It was actually, I think that's the first time in history that it ever happened. It had always been in a positive, a cash flow generator for, why else would you be in the business? You're not in the business to have to pay someone to take your product off of your hands, but that's what ended up happening. I think it's back into positive, but it's very, very low. But just the fact that that happened, and I think we know oil is a finite resource, and it is not the cleanest way to go for the earth. So that is a sign right there that something needs to change.
absolutely. And I like this. I'll end on this notion because I'm always just reminded of more bits of bliss, which is a statement, a quote that states that the Earth's natural systems are self-regenerative so that they recycle itself for the future and sustain. Whereas man-made structures are finite, deplete and destroy, and will come to an end. So in terms of what you just mentioned with oil, oil is a finite resource. Not only that, but it is also detrimental to the environment. But then when we look at the current society and system in which we live, oil is the lifeblood of it,
Currently, yeah,
from
yeah,
yeah, from shipping, manufacturing, plastics, all these different things. So we see that it is a man-made system. And referring back to the quote, depleting, so depleting natural resources, destructive, destroying ourselves and these different natural resources and people in the process,
mm,
and just not sustainable for the long run.
right.
So again, I feel that these COVID-19 days are certainly just the start in terms of a larger shift towards, greater ways of being moving into the future. So
Yeah,
I'm
and I
excited.
wanted to mention one thing. You mentioned it twice here, and what you just said over the last few minutes. I've just become conscious of this. You mentioned man-made. I like to say human-made because
Mm.
otherwise it takes
Oh, I
women out
like
of the
that.
equation.
I like that. I like that a lot. Nice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's a great insight. Yeah, vocab is powerful. Human made. Excellent. I'm gonna remember this. Sweet.
Yeah, that's just something I've been thinking about recently. I don't mean any disrespect to anyone by saying that, but I don't want to exclude one gender from
Yeah,
what
certainly,
society is doing. So,
certainly, because I'm sure there are many women in the process of all this as well.
yes.
You know,
Yep.
so yeah,
All right. Yeah. Well,
nice.
thanks for the insight. And I look forward to us talking again, probably in about a week's time, like we've been
Yep.
doing. And it'll be another incredibly, uh, I don't know, thought provoking for sure, and in
Yes,
depth conversation like it always is.
yes, indeed. So thank you everyone for watching. If you're here at this point with us, this has been XYZo and Mike with a plant-based diet, and I'll let you outro the rest.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you can connect with XYZo on Facebook, right? At Xylosphere. Is that what it is? That your Facebook
uh,
timeline?
that's on some other platform, Xyzosphere. But
Yeah.
on Facebook, I can be found at Xylo, like a little xylophone, and then Zon, like a John, but with a Z instead of a J, and then Smith Pajares. But if you type those first keywords, I should pop up. So
All right.
excellent.
Okay. We will see you again. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of the Earth Day.
Yes, thank you. Happy Earth Day, everyone.
Bye bye.